Welcome to the Film Florida podcast. I'm John Lux, and I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. Before we get to our interview, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the Film Florida podcast. If you're not already a member of Film Florida, please consider joining at filmflorida.org. If you like what you hear on the podcast, please consider going to our website and donating $20.23 for our 2023 fundraising campaign. We also have a Film Florida merchandise page. Visit filmflorida.creator-spring.com to purchase Film Florida t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, and more. Frank Patterson is the president and CEO of Trilith Studios in Atlanta, the largest purpose-built film studio in North America. Prior to Trilith Studios, Frank co-founded and served as the CEO of Pulse Evolution Corporation, a technology company that produces hyper-realistic digital humans for live and virtual reality applications. As an educator, he's still a faculty member at Florida State University's College of Motion Picture Arts, where he served as the dean from 2003 to 2016. We talk about all of this, plus some good stories, advice, and more on this episode of the Film Florida podcast. Here's my conversation with Frank Patterson. Welcome to the Film Florida podcast, Frank.
Thanks, John. How are you?
I am good. Thanks for being here. Let's start kind of at the beginning. What's your backstory? Where'd you come from?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm from Texas. Grew up in the hill country there, outside of San Antonio and Austin, a little town called Bernie. Went to Baylor University and happened to have the good fortune of attending at a time when they were starting sort of new media film program. Dr. Michael Corpy and Corey Carbonaro, they're the ones that launched it. And I just happened to hit the timing right. They were focused on storytelling. I wanted to be a storyteller of some kind, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And got good fortune of getting a great education and started making movies right out of school. I got really lucky. That's back in the day when VHS tapes were popular. For folks who don't know what a VHS tape, it's a little plastic box and holds tape. And anyway, so I did a little horror film that my mom called a horrible little film, but it sold a lot of VHS tapes. And, at the back in the day, $79.99, and you sell 30, 40,000 of those, all of a sudden you have money to make another movie.
Yeah.
So in a way, I kind of went to film school on those sort of direct to video movies, which led me out to LA where all the distribution was happening, right? Production. Yeah. And that was kind of the first of many times that I ended up living in LA and working in LA. And then kind of did something unusual, which I'm finding at the time it made a lot of sense, but I got offered to teach a directing class at a new film school, which was Florida State, and the very first set of graduate students, which I really took just as an opportunity to write another screenplay. I thought, well, I've never taught, but I'll teach at this new school, write another screenplay and go back. But got very lucky. The very first set of thesis films out of Florida State, which we didn't really know what we were doing. It was a brand new program, but first set of students. One of the thesis films was seen by a new filmmaker who was doing his second or third movie at the time, and that was Pulp Fiction. Mm-hmm. Took that thesis film and put the character and actually the actual actress and the story into Pulp Fiction. It was a Florida State thesis film called Curdle, made by Reb Braddock, who's now the dean at Florida State.
Right.
And anyway, and so that was just a lucky kind of hit out of the park first set of thesis films for Florida State. And, there's a lot of people that deserve a lot of credit for why Florida State became a preeminent film school. First of all, the state for being smart enough to put a program together that was really industry oriented at a time when that was not a popular move.
Yes.
And then, picking a dean like Ray Fielding, who had led so many different film schools, right? And then just some real entrepreneurial students like Reb Braddock and his peers in that first class. And we just, it was kind of lightning in a bottle, right? A lot of the resources came together and ended up very quickly on the national stage at Florida State. And for me, I kept making movies, but I also love teaching. So I've had this strange career where I am teaching all the time and and also, in this case, running a studio and making movies and serving on boards of production companies. I literally just came from meeting a new class of MFA students from University of Georgia just a few minutes ago.
Wow.
And so I just love the teaching part. I've had the good fortune of watching a student wrestling through a thesis film, and then you cut to, and it seems like a minute later, they're receiving an Academy Award for Best Picture.
Yep.
I'm old enough. I'm 107 years old, but I'm old enough where I sort of see it, and it happens in a blink of an eye. So, I'm in industry because I love the impact storytelling can have on the world, but I also am in education because I love the impact that teaching can have on the great storytellers. So
Yeah.
that's the history about as quickly as I can do it.
Excellent. Let's stick with Florida State a little bit. It's important to note Ray Fielding is a Film Florida legend. So, I mean, our organization recognized his importance. FSU Film School is still a great member of ours. We love our relationship with them. And you were the dean of the College of Motion Picture Arts from 2003 to 2016. How did you become the dean there?
Well, it really was, I taught there and was kind of the head of production of the graduate program from its first set of graduate students for the first 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and loved teaching, and then left to move back to LA. I'd left a few times during my tenure there to make a movie or two, which really, by the way, is one of the secrets to Florida State's success, which is having faculty be able to just leave on a moment's notice and make a movie.
Yes.
And so that was really important to Ray when we started this. I kind of helped the film school come up with different ways for that to happen, because as a filmmaker, I needed it to happen. And so I was just saying in my meeting prior to this that Florida State was entrepreneurial in that it recognized the value of entrepreneurs on their faculty. And so now we obviously at Florida State, we have a college of entrepreneurship now, but we were the university and its leadership. Larry Abel, who was the provost at the time, and Sandy Dallampert and TK and the leaders really just recognized the value of having faculty that were entrepreneurs. So I left often, or as often as I needed to make a movie, and kept teaching, and really was able to have this parallel life that then led me to the opportunity of when Ray was looking to retire, because I had continued to be very active in the industry, and because I was a faculty member who knew the program well, had built a lot of the systems. I think I was kind of just a logical choice. I had just had a son who was 3 years old, and I didn't really want to raise him in LA, to be honest with you.
Yep.
So the timing was perfect. And my wife, who's an actress, it was something she and I had been talking about and working on together, was how do you combine the sort of teaching and learning of acting more effectively with the teaching and learning of filmmaking. And we did a little bit of that at Chapman University while we were in LA. We did some of it in LA Film School while we were there. And boy, Dr. Abel, the provost at the time, said, wow, let's put this on steroids. Let's get Leslie in here and build a bridge between the School of Theater and the film school.
Yeah.
And she did. And it's a great relationship that has yielded some wonderful students. But importantly, it really yielded a new level of learning that was unparalleled at the time between colleges or schools of theater and film school. It was easy to execute because I was so familiar with what we were doing at Florida State. As the dean, I could move some barriers out of the way for the faculty. And then obviously with our industry experience, my wife and myself, we kind of knew what needed to have happen. And I was reporting to a provost and a president that was pro-industry. So it kind of just made sense.
Yeah.
And so I did it longer than I thought. I thought I'll get in here for 5 years and help do some things. But, we ended up building a lot of capabilities that I was excited about. And I had the good fortune of having, Reb Braddock as my associate dean. He's the only person I know in the world that's more passionate about the film school than I am, if that's possible. We just moved a lot of mountains and got a lot of stuff done. And, we had 1 year where we won more Student Academy Awards and Emmys in 1 year, our students did, than any film school in the history of the industry. And we only graduate, 60 students a year between the undergrad and graduate programs. So
Right.
we were knocking it out of the park. And I ended up staying longer than I thought I would. But look, Reb is doing a great job. He should probably have been in there earlier than I got out of there.
Well, talk about the evolution. I mean, you talk about how long you were there. What are some of your most proud accomplish? I mean, you mentioned a couple, but talk about the evolution of the film school while you were the dean, because the industry obviously was changing significantly during that time as well.
That's right. And really, if I look at it from industry, right, in the early 2000s began this period of what became the streaming services, right, and the kind of new model for value creation in the industry. And we knew that was going to have an impact on the next generation of filmmakers. So we began to offer broader resources to the film students and really challenging them to think of themselves not simply as a director or a writer or an editor, but more as a filmmaker with a lot of different skills. So we created a writing program, we created a digital arts program, and more importantly, we integrated all these things. So students couldn't just be a writer, or students wouldn't just be a director.
Mm-hmm.
That was our acting program that we had with the School of Theater that was led by Leslie France, my wife. It just created a lot of what academics call interdisciplinary learning, but what we in industry call a smart hire. So it was really just these kids began to graduate with a lot of skills that the old model of film school didn't really support.
Yeah.
And so that kind of fast tracked the rate of students that ended up in industry after graduation. We were always at 99+%.
Yep.
And usually something tragic happened when someone didn't land there, a death or something like that. But when I think about my period of time there, I'm most proud of the way we responded to the changes in industry and the way we prepared graduates for an emerging industry.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're in the middle of an incredible change right now that will make that change seem small. Over the next 5 years, I can always count on Florida State to be responsive, because it is in the mission that we prepare students for successful careers in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in the mission of the school that was created by the state. We have no other choice but to be responsive to industry. So
now, is that truly the secret sauce of the FSU Film School, in that, I mean, year after year after year, it's in the top 10, top 15 of film schools in America. And I read all those articles. We're very proud of our members for being in those. But like, it's hard to differentiate. Like, why? Why does FSU, the College of Motion Picture Arts, have such success? Is that the secret sauce?
yeah. Well, let me pause for a second and just say, as a dean, we are asked by colleague deans to review other programs. So outside reviewers come in and review programs. We help each other out. So
Okay.
I have reviewed a lot of the programs, just as an outside evaluator who's taken a deep dive into why these other programs work. I will tell you that the rankings are quite biased toward New York and LA, because the fundamental assumption of those rankings is if you're going to school in LA, you must have an advantage.
Yep.
Which actually is not true. So when I think about the success rates of the percentage of graduates that graduate from those schools, which they're great schools, by the way, and the ones that are listed in there, the bias toward the LA and New York film schools based on location is highly overrated.
Sure.
So I would put Florida State, and I've reviewed every one of those top schools. I put Florida State in the top two or three of film schools in the country, and top 5 in the world, just in terms of what they're really teaching. Because at the end of the day, when a student signs up for a school, the only reason they're doing it is, I disagree with Spike Lee's original comment when he said, you go to film school for equipment. Well, if that's the case, you don't need to go to film school.
Right.
Not anymore.
Right.
So you want to go to film school to fast track or accelerate your storytelling skills. And that requires a lot of one-on-one time with seasoned people. Now, I'm not going to mention any other schools here, but I'll just say other schools are very fortunate to have a 15 or 20 to 1 faculty to student ratios. Schools that are actually, one school that I'm not going to mention that is actually higher ranked than Florida State has a 35 to 1 faculty to student ratio.
Mm.
The kind of one-on-one time you get with a great storyteller on a 35 to 1, it's a joke.
Right.
It's a joke. So Florida State has a 5 to 1.
Okay.
And its learning environment is the only one where it's truly hands-on, meaning faculty are working one-on-one with student writers as they develop the script, one-on-one with student directors as they make the film, one-on-one with student editors. It's really just challenging in a kind of practicum setting the storytellers to be better and to be better and to be better. So that kind of one-on-one practicum setting where the classroom is on location. By the way, we do have classes in a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a bit more of the learning happens actually while the film is being made. And nothing beats, filmmaking is nothing more than teams working to solve complex problems under pressure. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's just complex problem solving under pressure. And nothing beats being in that situation where you feel yourself starting to sweat and a mentor says, okay, ask yourself what's going on right now. And they help frame the problem for you. So the next time you face the problem under pressure, you have that framework. And that kind of mentorship, framework providing type of learning is unique to Florida State and what allows it to compete as one of the best film schools in the world with all these other schools.
That's a great explanation. I love the way you frame that. Now, during the time that you were the dean, you also served as the chief executive officer at Pulse Evolution Corporation, a recognized pioneer and leading developer of hyper-realistic digital humans for holographic live performances, virtual reality, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence. Now, you were doing this before it was quote unquote mainstream. We'll get into a specific performance next, but what was it like working in that technology? How did you find yourself in that kind of niche at that time?
Well, first of all, I've always been a bit of a student technologist all my life, right? I mean, when I made my very first movie, half the fun was just learning how to operate all the equipment and then breaking down the equipment, trying to figure out why it worked the way it worked. You know, I don't know how many members watching this will actually know what I'm talking about here, but I saw a Nagra 4.2 audio recording machine and I couldn't believe how beautiful it was made. It's unbelievable Swiss technology that was just elegant sound recording. I grew up in a sound recording studio. My dad was a musician. I'm a musician. And the idea that this beautiful technology could capture such awesome sound that was really genuinely human, that would cause people to get goosebumps.
Yeah.
I'm a passionate lover of technology. And actually at Florida State, I was a co-author of a SMPTE paper where we put the first digital soundtrack. This is in 1993.
Okay.
We put a digital soundtrack with a 16 millimeter print and we projected thesis films digitally because the 16 millimeter sound was so awful. It was just awful.
Right.
Using technology to augment the experience for audiences is something I've just loved from the beginning. So Pulse was really born out of myself and two other colleagues' interest in what if we took technology and a lot of the technology that was sort of being left on the shelf by the visual effects companies. And what if we applied it to a new way of thinking about assets in the movie business? And in the case of assets, what I mean is what we used to call, and I think we actually introduced this term with an article in the Wall Street Journal, but hyper-realistic digital humans, you know, what might be called deep fakes now today, but really the idea that can we create a digital version of a human that a human actually believes, that actually crosses the uncanny valley, right? And was very difficult to do.
Yep.
And I would say Digital Domain did it first in the movie business with The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, you know, a movie where the first 50 something minutes, Brad Pitt's not even in it because, you know, it's a digital human. And didn't, by the way, tell that story about how they did it until after the movie was released. So the audience didn't even know. Right. And so we were actually crossing the uncanny valley as an industry, as early as Fincher's movie there in the mid 2000s, but actually making it, into a commercial product was a bit of a long ways away. We felt like at Pulse, well, we could do that. And so we built the virtual Michael Jackson asset for, I think it was at the end of the day, $3 to $4 million. And it was a reusable asset. This is kind of a creepy conversation, I know.
Yeah.
But in today's world, the idea of having an AI
Right.
that is, an illustration of John Lux talking is not, that's on us right now. That's going to be happening every day.
Yep.
So, we were ahead of our time, obviously, but it was an opportunity for us to play with emerging technologies to create a new kind of entertainment, a new kind of technological asset that would give us an experience for audiences that just didn't exist before. And by the way, that's Florida State saying, take a leave for a year and go build a company.
Yeah.
That's literally, so I took a leave as dean for a year and went to go build this company. And, by the way, just personally, on a personal level, it was just a great learning experience. Again, I love to learn constantly, and I think we'll always be intellectually curious. But we actually were able to build some stuff that the world actually woke up to.
Yeah.
And, it was fun.
And now that whole thing, exploded in 2014 when you used that technology as part of the Billboard Music Awards. And you mentioned the Michael Jackson. That video performance garnered more than 94 million views on YouTube. Talk about the process going into that and then kind of the reaction afterwards.
It was both the best of times and the worst of times. We really felt like it would be fun to try to pull off, but we needed more time than the estate had. And so some folks thought, well, in order to pull it off, well, if you need more time, what if we just put more money on it?
Right.
And
yeah.
It doesn't work that way. I mean, when you're dealing with technology at that level, as I told my colleagues who thought we should move faster, a woman can make a baby in 9 months. 9 women cannot make a baby in a month. It doesn't work that way. So no matter how much money we throw at it, it's not going to work. And so we had an accelerated timeline to build this virtual Michael Jackson asset and put this performance, A Slave to the Rhythm performance, in the Billboard Music Awards. That really was very difficult to pull off. We were hoping to get a September, October show. They settled on a May show. We really moved fast, and it was very difficult to pull off. It grayed my hair to get it there in that performance. But at the end of the day, it ended up working. It helped launch Michael's new album. And, I think we had 98 billion internet impressions in the first week. And that was both, exciting and challenging, because at the end of the day, then what's your next move, right? And so glad to help the Jackson estate and Michael's legacy by being involved in something like that. But, we were building a business that had to keep going and build other assets and really use this technology that didn't really yet have a home, for an application, and try to figure out how to make it work in a broader way. And today, of course, that was 2014, right?
Right.
So here we are 9 years later. It's a world of difference. We used a little bit of AI to help accelerate the animation process in the MJ asset, but today those AIs are much broader, much more robust, and their capabilities dwarf what we were able to do 9 years ago.
Yeah.
The idea that we're going to be generating, let's call it artificial assets or synthetic assets, part human, part synthetic, is just an everyday assumption. I mean, I think right now, more than 90% of all content on the internet is generated by humans. And in 3 years, probably 3 years time, more than 90% of the content on the internet will be synthetically created. Synthetically, meaning AIs will have touched or been a part of the creation process, if not all of it, for 90% of the content. So the idea that we're going to extend our capabilities as makers or as humans, the same way my glasses, I notice you have glasses, these glasses extend our capabilities in an amazing way, right? couldn't do without them myself. I'm blind. But, AIs or the associated technologies being able to extend our capabilities every day as humans, certainly as makers in the content space, 90% of the content's going to be synthetically created on the internet. And that's a huge, think about the impact of that.
Yeah.
So we were just early days at Pulse playing with technology that was going to go somewhere very interesting eventually.
Well, and that the AI discussion is a huge topic right now in the industry as a whole, because for both the pros and the cons of it. And so yeah, it's only going to get probably messier, unfortunately, as we go.
Well, I think, it's funny you say that. I think we are at a time where it is, of course, it depends on how you look at all this, right? Because I can find a doomsday sayer and I can find a Pollyanna.
Exactly.
Join us on this conversation. But let me just say this. There hasn't been a technology that has had a potential change come in modern times in society where there wasn't someone saying, well, that's going to be the end of the world.
Right.
Right. So name your technology. I'll give you the list of people who said it was going to destroy the world. And by the way, it doesn't mean that this one won't. This might be the one.
Right.
But in reality, and I'll just make this specific about the film industry, the writers are concerned right now. By the way, we have concerns about a technology, the capabilities of which we really don't understand.
Yep.
Right. And we're trying to draw conclusions about it. So the only thing, right now, the strike that's going on, the center of this content making part is producers can't just use AIs to create scripts.
Right.
And we're just not at a place right now where I think any producer worth their salt would want to have an AI produced script, right?
Agreed.
You always want a writer, I think, a human brain. And that may change in the long run, but for certainly in the short midterm here, you're going to be needing humans involved in the whole process. And there definitely will be synthetic assets created that at time, will become industry entertainment that will, have very little human involvement. But as a result, it will also probably have very little humanity in it. And there's going to be a marketplace for people, for human created content. So we're a long way from having to cross that bridge. But in the meantime, I think great writers are going to have these great tools. Great filmmakers are going to have a great set of tools. We're just going to be in a really exciting time. I actually am excited about this AI revolution. I'm a technologist at heart, and I just see the upside. So
yeah. Now, right now, we've talked a lot about kind of the past, but right now you are the president and CEO of Trilith Studios in Atlanta, which has been used for a lot of blockbusters. I actually have a list in my questions, but there's too many actually to list them out. So, for those that aren't familiar with Trilith Studios, give us the backstory on the studio.
Trilith Studios we just learned we happen to be the largest studio campus in North America. We have 34 sound stages, lot of over 1.5 million square feet of stages and workshops and technology, and not to mention a town that we built as part of the studio complex here that's ultimately built for 5,000 people. We have about 1,100 people living here now. Retail and restaurants. We have a hotel that's going to open up here in a couple months. So it's a place.
Yep.
What Trilith is a place. Our vision is to build this place that has every resource that storytellers need to do anything they can imagine. So it's a big vision. It's a big idea. It happens to be 20 minutes from the most traveled airport in the world. So that helps.
Yep.
And then if you're going to do something like that, how are you really going to build such a thing? Because it's a big vision. And the way we're doing it is we're putting our capital to work in what we call a creative market ecosystem. And all that means is, what are the businesses and who are the people that you need to invest in that when they're co-located at Trilith, provide every resource that a storyteller needs to do anything they can imagine. We're almost there. I mean, we have 65. I don't know if we're almost there. I should say that, because it feels like we get to the top of a mountain and it turns out that was just a foothill. Right. We got to keep climbing. So, but it does feel like we're getting close. We have a little over 65 businesses here, and that ranges from, the largest lighting and grip company in the US, MBS, to a great restaurant from a great sushi chef that we love here in Georgia. All the Angelinos love. So when you think about the businesses, that represents more than 1,000 full-time employees. We typically have about 5,200, 5,500 people badging onto the lot every day.
Yeah.
And on 1,000 acres, we actually own another 2,200 acres. So, but if you picture 1,000 acres, if you can picture that, and just think of the largest studio campus in North America with a town, with schools and restaurants and a hotel coming, and it's just a place where a lot of people really enjoy living because it has all the benefits of a city center, but it's outside of that traffic of a big city.
Yeah.
Which is a larger trend that's going on across the world.
Sure.
Where so we just happen to get lucky and hit that trend. But the filmmakers love it. We have all kinds of crazy talented people living in the town. Very well-known visual effects supervisor who did the effects for Harry Potter and Chronicles of Narnia. Is a great thought leader named Jim Burney, and actually who I built the Digital Human Company with.
Okay.
He and his family lives here, and we just have all kinds of film crew. And by the way, also we have attorneys and doctors and pilots here too. And my mom, she lives in town, so I have my mom at work. So it's just this place that really has become, really globally recognized as a center of excellence in the movie business. And we started through a relationship with the Pinewood Studios.
Right.
That's how we were launched. And that's really how I met the studio, came in contact with the studio, was really as Pinewood Atlanta. As Pinewood Studios foray into the US market, right? 2013 is when we struck the deal. And the first movie we did was with Marvel, Ant-Man in 2014. Paint still drying, building the first set of stages. But really what I brought to the venture was this idea that we could be more than studio facilities, meaning let's invest in technology and let's invest in content companies and have a 3-pillar business. And eventually when Pinewood recapped, their new capital didn't really want to be in those other 2 pillars.
Right.
Somebody had to buy somebody, and that's what we did. And we rebranded as Trilith, 3 pillars, right?
Okay.
And a Trilith is, by the way, I was looking for a metaphor. Stonehenge was such a wonderful metaphor for us because it's this purpose-built place with the richest technology of its time, and also had all these incredible stories associated with it. So, but we're not going to call the place Stonehenge Studios, right?
Right.
But we also wanted to carry some of the British heritage that we had, right? And Stonehenge was right, 60, 70 miles down the road from Pinewood. So it was like, how could we do this? But that 3-stone structure in Stonehenge is called a trilith.
Okay.
And so the 3-pillar business, story and purpose-built facilities and technology, those are our 3 pillars of business. And that's how we came up with Trilith Studios.
It isn't just everybody knows it for the film start part of it, and you've talked about it a little bit here, but it's a one-stop shop for all types of production, television, music, video games. Touch on the importance of supporting all of those content creation aspects under one roof, so to speak.
The co-location of artists, storytellers, crafts people. The idea here is we're building a micro cluster, what Dr. Michael Porter from Harvard's Institute of Strategy and Competitiveness would call a micro cluster, right? He studied clusters, he and his graduate students, for 30 years. Why did Hollywood become Hollywood? Why did Detroit become what it did for cars? Why, and it turns out, a lot of these micro clusters form around industries. And so really what we're doing is we built this micro cluster centered on story and storytelling. And what happens is there's a lot of different kinds of artists associated with a movie. There are musicians, right? There are literally our most popular, very famous stage, which is a virtual stage, stage 22, is being run on a game engine. And of course, we have gamers that are gaming engineers that are running the Unreal Engine, and we need painters and carpenters. And it turns out we need all these different kinds of artists to support storytelling, whether it be in the gaming space, in the music space, and the live performance space. We have live television stages. And if these kinds of makers and crew people and the kind of culture that comes with it, if these people feel at home here,
Mm-hmm.
We win. So that's the larger goal, is to really genuinely build this place that has every resource that they need to do anything they can imagine.
Yeah.
And those resources, as you know, means people and culture,
Right.
as well as all the technology and everything else.
And through all of this, you've maintained your relationship with FSU College of Motion Picture Arts. So talk about what you're still doing and you're still associated with them on.
I love the film school. I will always love the film school. It means the world to me. I teach whenever Reb lets me teach. I try to teach as much as I can, and also what my schedule allows. Obviously, I'm not a salaried person at Florida State anymore.
Right.
I'm still a faculty member. I took a leave to do this work at Trilith, but I still am a faculty member, and I continue to be a mentor to our graduates. Actually, I just met this morning with one of our graduates, Demetrius Wren, who moved to Georgia after being in New York and LA, and he's downstairs in our co-working space today. And we were talking about his script, just like we did when he was a student. And, all the alums have access to me. I don't, LinkedIn can be a dangerous place.
Sure.
You only connect with people who you really know. But anytime there's a Florida State alum, I'm connecting with every one of them, even the new ones I don't know, who I haven't had any experience with in the last few years. But I will always be a resource to the film school. My wife and I are donors to the film school. I'm a faculty member at the film school. I am a resource to Rev anytime he needs it, anytime the faculty needs it. I'm all in. We love Florida State, and I'm just one of those people that will always feel that loyalty. I can't help it.
Yeah. I guess maybe most importantly, though, if Florida State plays Georgia for the national championship in football, who do you root for?
No question. I'm sorry. It's Florida State. I've been in that situation where, as you might imagine, there's a lot of football rivalries around here.
Sure, of course.
Because Georgia's football land as well.
Yep.
But, I had the good fortune of my parking spot at the film school was next to Coach Bowden's.
Okay.
Right. And so sometimes I'd time it when I know he's going to be pulling up just so I can ask Coach about the game. Right. So Coach Bowden had an influence on, as you know, millions of people. He had a lot of people, but he had an influence on me personally. And so once that kind of thing happens, you just, I'm never not going to be rooting for the Knowles.
There you go. What's your, the obligatory question is talk about advice. What advice do you give people looking to get involved in the industry today?
I would just say, wow, you couldn't have picked a better time to get involved. There were so many barriers to entry when I got involved. And even until just about 3-4 years ago, there's so many barriers to entry, meaning a lot of different gates that you needed to go through to be recognized and then funded for the opportunity of being a storyteller in our society. Well, that's pretty much disappearing. I'll give you an example. There's a kids' TV show called Coco Melon. It's a kids show for 3-year-olds. I can't watch it, but it's the second most popular YouTube channel in the world for a while. And all these animated stories that kids were really connected to and parents felt safe for their kids to connect with. And Moobug Entertainment did it without ever taking a meeting with any of the Hollywood studios. These were just storytellers that were wanting to connect with kids. And they built a multi-billion-dollar business without Hollywood. And today, whether you like it or not, college kids have their rights to name, image, and likeness, and they're learning how to exploit that and how to tell their own stories. And that is amazing. So I'm giving just a few examples. Before Netflix acquired Coco Melon, it was already a multi-billion-dollar business. Right. So they didn't need Hollywood. That's a big multi-billion-dollar example. They're all over the place. Mr. Beast may be the most popular influencer there is out there right now. He's a storyteller at heart. I've gotten to know him, and he's a storyteller at heart. And, when he builds Willy Wonka's set to tell a story, you're talking about a person who loves Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
And so the ability for storytellers to acquire audiences that follow them and then monetizing those audiences is all Hollywood's been doing, with a whole bunch of barriers to entry that have kind of fallen away now.
Yep.
And so I would say, first, good timing on your part. Second, if you're going to be a storyteller, recognize that it's like any other craft. You may have the skill of Michael Jordan in basketball, but you got to remember Michael Jordan spent a lot of time on that court.
Yep.
So don't discount the reps that are necessary to try and fail in storytelling, because it is a craft. The great storytellers don't just pop up.
Right.
So use the fact that you have all this access to media and to technology to try and fail storytelling a lot as you build your audiences, and get in the game now. Don't wait for perfect. Good is good enough for right now. Start making content now. Start building audiences. Tell the stories you love. Make sure they're authentic. People do not respond to inauthenticity.
Right.
And start now. Don't wait. I mean, don't ask for permission to get in this industry. Start now.
Yeah. Now, I think that in this conversation, the two words you've probably used most is technology and storytelling. How do you balance those two? There are a lot of people that get into the industry now and just want to talk about equipment and cameras and all of these things, and they forget about the storytelling side. It is better to tell a good story while using the technology. So how do you balance those as you're looking at different projects?
It's really simple. To me, one is just the means to the other. And so, look, at the end of the day, technology, I'll just tell you as a storyteller, the goal has always been that the technology should be transparent to the storytelling process. Like, meaning the technology is just the means to the end. And in an ideal world, and this is never the case, but in an ideal world, the technology would only enable and not slow up the making of the process. The coolest, best technology would just be able to make your story faster and help you iterate more, because the gold is the story. The human brain needs story to survive as much as the human body needs oxygen. So we are literally feeding human brains, and you got to ask yourself, what are we feeding them? I hope we're feeding them good stuff that's causing them to. And so being good at storytelling means you have to convince everybody in the world who, your audiences who've been told a lot of stories and who tell themselves stories, that somehow you've got something interesting to talk about. Well, that takes reps, it takes iteration. So don't let the technology get in the way. Do whatever you can to tell stories. The latest, this kid, what's his name, the musician who just popped, he'd been doing iPhone videos of his songs with bad audio recording. This isn't his first video, it ain't his first song.
Right.
But finally got a decent mic. And to him, what was a real camera? It wasn't a cinematic camera, I'm sure. It was just a camera.
Yep.
And, recorded a song. And next thing you know, 90 whatever million views later, he's popping as an artist. But it wasn't his first pass at this. It's not his first time to pick up a guitar. It's not his first time to sing. It's not his first time to record.
Right.
He's been wrestling with the technology in his country field for quite a while.
Yeah.
So whatever you're doing as a storyteller, don't let the technology get in the way. Do it in such a way where it enables you to succeed. And don't wait around for the technology to solve the problem. You're the storyteller.
That's great. Now, Frank, we'll put aside the tremendous jealousy that all of us in Florida have for what you're doing at Trilith Studios. But if people want to learn more about you or the studio itself, where can they go? Where can they learn more?
You can follow all of our different Trilith accounts on all the different social media. Just Trilith Studios, Town at Trilith, Trilith Foundation. Just about any time you use the word Trilith, you'll find us on social. Obviously, check out our website as well if you want to do a little bit more deep diving, trilith.com, and you'll see the studios, the town, the foundation, the Trilith Institute. By the way, if you're in the area, just stop by the town. Right below me here is Hero Burgers. They're the greatest. There's a sushi place right here. Enzo Steakhouse, by the way, is one of the best restaurants in Atlanta, and it's right here. There's just so much to do here. It's funny. I think some folks think you can't come to the town because you're not in the industry. No, the town is open to the public. Come on in and sign up for a tour of Trilith Studios through the Trilith Experience. You just click on the foundation and You can take a tour of the studios. Right now is not the greatest time because there's a strike going on, so the stage is empty. But once the strike's done, you can take a tour and just come visit us if you want to do a deeper dive than simply what's online.
Yeah, that's good. Now, Frank, I can't thank you enough for accepting the invitation to be on the podcast. I mean, I don't say this lightly. You are a legend here in the state of Florida. We know everything you've done for the College of Motion Picture Arts and as well as the rest of the industry. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, and thanks for being on the Film Florida podcast.
Thank you, John. And thank you so much for what you're doing with the podcast. I'm so excited to learn about it. I've been following you since, so I really love what you're doing, and let's keep Film Florida growing.
Thanks for listening to the Film Florida podcast. For more information about Film Florida, go to filmflorida.org and like or follow our social media pages. If you're not already a member of Film Florida, please consider joining at filmflorida.org. If you like what you hear on the podcast, please consider going to our website and donating $20.23 for our 2023 fundraising campaign. Check out Film Florida merchandise at filmflorida.creator-spring.com, and please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast.